Hi, you guys. I'm Sarah Neuter. I'm a professor of classics and the chair of the Poetry in the Human core sequence. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone here at the Performance Hall, and especially Greg Rodenius and also Starsha Gill in creative writing for their invaluable help in organizing this event. And I want to thank the Humanities Collegiate Division for funding it. After the reading today, Professor Hayes will take a few questions and also sign some books outside. So that's at the table outside the Performance Hall that have been kindly provided for sale by the Seminary Co-op. It is a great pleasure and honor to introduce the poet Terrance Hayes to you today. Professor Hayes is a recipient of many awards and prizes and the author of 6 poetry collections, including American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin, which was published in 2018. This book is especially significant for the Poetry in the Human students here today, since it was our summer reading assignment, the book that we asked you to complete in the months before the beginning of your college education, way back in August of 2021. That may seem like a long time ago now, but as we come to the end of another strange academic year and the first year of university for some of you, I'd like to suggest that returning to and attending to the poetry of Terrance Hayes is the perfect way to stimulate and enlarge our sense of poetry at its finest, and poetry as a conduit to reckoning with the society, literatures, and histories with which and in which we live. So as you'll recall, American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin is a book of same-titled sonnets, that classical 14-line poem that often pivots at a volta. The book itself is cleverly constructed into 5 14-sonnet sections, as if each poem were not just a sonnet itself, but a piece of a larger sonnet-like construction that conceals and reveals its own twist or turn. This principle of construction itself leads one to wonder both about the sonnet as a unit for delivering language and ideas, and about its capacity as a form that can expand into presumably endless regress, as all language and ideas can. It allows Hayes to show how poems fully inhabit their moment, and in this case, a particularly terrifying and extended moment that followed the election of 2016. But this form also shows the moment reaching both into the past and future, even literally, as when Hayes writes in one poem of the present telling yesterday to love me better. Yet Hayes also warns us of, quote, how little writing rescues. Perhaps it is in this light that his poetry often returns to the figure of Orpheus, who is sometimes hailed as the first poet in ancient Greece, but is equally a symbol of what poetry cannot do, a symbol then of love and loss, of poetic enchantment and its failings. That said, Hayes does not just accept the Orpheus he finds, but is always playing with him. Sometimes Hayes's Orpheus writes or draws rather than sings, sometimes he dances, sometimes he does not love at all, and sometimes it is rather Eurydice who is the poet. In his poetry, then, Terrance Hayes offers forms that constrain, but also gives room for play, change, and surprise. He reveals our own role in configuring the past and exposes our hopes and fears for the future. Please join me in warmly welcoming him today.
Thanks, Sarah. How's everybody? It's been a good day. I had a good conversation. And usually I like for the readings to just sort of like stretch out some of the stuff that comes up in the conversation. And I think I'm gonna do that because what I really realized when I heard that y'all hadn't read this book since the summer is that maybe I don't really have to read it. I'll read a few things from it, and then I'll read some new stuff. There's something that I think I maybe will try out, and then we can talk. And then if I've missed something in the book, if there's something you really want to hear around it, we can come back to it. I'll still read a couple poems from it, But I'm just trying to get to, the immediate stuff, immediate questions, which maybe still are connected to the conversation I had earlier with the smaller group. But so look, good to be here. Hey, everybody. I like the acoustics in here. I like the color of these chairs. That's really cool. And I'm gonna read you some stuff. So, yeah, I guess there were people who maybe won't know all of the stuff that goes around these poems. I did start them really the day or two. If the election was on a Tuesday, by Thursday I had already written 2 poems. And they were called For My Past and Future Assassin, and it was like certainly the country and the mood of the country with somebody like Trump getting elected. And then, so that was like, you know, that early in November, and then on November 13th of that same week, Wanda Coleman, who I knew and revered and had actually written a poem for her in the book before this book, passed, oh, it was her birthday. She passed away, and on November 13th was her birthday. So I went to this thing and I did this thing for her, and I was like, oh, I should call these poems American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. So I wrote a bunch that weekend, getting ready for her birthday, and essentially trying to be her. So I say that to you because, again, I'm just trying to get us to the end, thinking about like inflection and like sometimes all you're trying to do is sound like somebody else to surprise yourself. So I think people think of poems as these like, purely you, but it's like, it is kind of, but really the only way to get there is like sometimes put a mask on or look over your own shoulder, that kind of idea. So that comes out of some stuff today that I'll loop back to because I'm just thinking about, really the last poem I was sort of interested in and I'm still interested in is a poem about Bob Ross. So I'm gonna see if we can wind up there. All right, so that's all to say, as I started writing them, they were just like that some days. Like once I decided that was going to be the title, which is like November 13th, so maybe I got 4 or 5 of them going now, then I was like, and then my birthday was on November 18th, so you know, Wanda Coleman is a Scorpio. So I knew she was gonna be my guide. And so on my birthday, I sat and wrote one. I didn't go out, I woke up at 7 a.m., and I went to bed at like 2 a.m. So my whole birthday was like working on one of these sonnets, and I was like, that's the best birthday I've ever had. And so some days I would get 2, some days I'd be like, what am I doing? Because I would just be writing them every day. I already had the sonnet and I had the title, so anything could go inside of it. But a few times I would really literally be like, what the fuck am I gonna do? I should try to define it, you know? And then I would just try to write a sonnet saying, this is what my American sonnet is. So the one on the back is an example. There's a couple, maybe I'll read a couple of those. So here's the one that I put it on the back of the book to say, like, I'm trying to tell you what the form is. Like if it's something you've never heard or if you don't know what the book is about and you happen to pick the book up, I'm saying to you, this is what it is. The question is though, is this you that I'm speaking to? You, like the reader, or is it like Trump? You know, and I would just like, it just depends. You know, if you think it's you, maybe it's you. If you think it's Trump. So it's that kind of thing in it. I lock you in an American sonnet that is part prison, part panic closet, a little room, and a house set aflame. I lock you in a form that is part music box, part meat grinder, to separate the song of the bird from the bone. I lock your persona in a dream-inducing sleeper hold while your better selves watch from the bleachers. I make you both Jim and Crow here. As the Crow, you undergo a beautiful catharsis, trapped one night in the shadows of the gym. As the gym, the feel of crochet dropping to your floors is not unlike the stars falling from the pep rally posters on your walls. I make you a box of darkness with a bird in its heart. Bolters of acoustics, instinct, and metaphor. It is not enough to love you. It is not enough to want you destroyed. And then, like, here's one, so just to give you the feel of it, because, you know, I published the book before he got out of there. My initial goal was just to write one, at least one a day for 4 years. And then I thought I would still be doing other stuff, and maybe that's even in some of these other poems. And so it was like a side exercise, but after about 2 years in, my editor was like, I think you got enough for a book. So I gave him that. But I would still write them, you know, and so I'll read a couple of those. But again, here it was just like, could I write a sonnet that was also like an abecedarian poem? And I'm thinking about like, what kinds of things kill me? So it's a very literal thing that just, again, I can just dump it right down into this ready-made historical context. American Sonnet for My Past and Future Assassin, which I also say is like, you know, different titles. Every time I come to it, they're not actually the same title. It's like John Smith, you know, there's a lot of people with that name, they're all different. So I say it each time because, you know, it's a different title. American Sonnet for My Past and Future Assassin. Arians, Betty Crocker, Betty Levette, Blowfish, briar bushes, bubbas, buckras, Archie bunkers, bullhorns, bullwhips, bullets, all cancers kill me. Car crashes, cavemen, chakras, crackers, discord, dissonance, doves, Elvis, ghosts, the Grim Reaper herself, a heart attack while making love, hangmen, hillbillies exist, lilies, Martha Stewarts, Mayflower maniacs, money grubbers, Gwen Brooks the mother, my mother's bipolar as bacon, pancakes kill me, phonies, dead roaches, big roaches and smaller roaches, the sheepish, snakes, all seven seas, snow avalanches, swan songs, sciatica, killer wasps, yeehaws, you now and then, disease. Let's see here. Here's another one that's kind of like a definition of the form. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. The song must be cultural, confessional, clear, but not obvious. It must be full of compassion and crows bowing in a vulture's shadow. The song must have 6 sides to it in the clamor of voltas. The song must turn on the compass of language like a tangle of wire endowed with feeling. The notes must tear and tear. There must be a love for the minute and minute. There must be a record of witness and daydream. Where the heart is torn or feathered and tarred, where death is undone, time diminished, the song must hold its own storm and drum and shed a noise so lovely it is sung at sunset weddings, baptisms, and beheadings henceforth. Let's see here. Yeah, you know, they're just all over the place. Here's another one that's a definition. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. Our sermon today concerns the dialectic blessings between transgression and transcendence. We're on the middle floor where the darkness we bury is equal to the lightness we intend. We stand in the valley and go to our knees on the mountain. One rope pulls the body down and into earth, the other pulls up and after stars. To be divided is to be multiplied. Let us ponder how it is that you and I have remained alive. Mississippi and all the seas bound to sky by rain, the root and reach of all the trees. When the wound is deep, the healing is heroic. Suffering and ascendance require the same work. Our sermon today sets the beauty of sin against the purity of dirt. Here's one. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. In a parallel world where all Doctor Who's are black, I'm the doctor who knows no God is more powerful than time. In a parallel world where all the doctors who are black see cops box black boys in cop cars and caskets, I'm the doctor who blacks out whenever he sees a police box. In a parallel world where doctors who box cops in caskets cry doing their jobs, I disappear inside a skull that's larger on the inside. Question: if in a parallel world where every Doctor Who was black, you were the complex Time Lord, when and where would you explore? My answer is, a brother has to know how to time travel and doctor himself when a knee or shoe stalls against his neck. I feel like there was one more in here I should read. Let's see. Maybe I think I'm going to move on here to some of these other poems. Like, there must be something funny in here I can read for y'all. Y'all so quiet. Like, I'm sure there's some funny poems in here. Maybe not. I'm like, what are the poems that people laugh at when I read them? See, like, no, it's funny at the end, but it's not going to be funny for most of the poem. Oh, here's one. Here's one. Okay. So, yeah, some days I'd be like, waking up, and he would be right in my face. And so, sometimes I would just. So the thing about the sonnet, maybe this will come up in the Q&A, the Q&A, is that, like, it's a love poem. So you really can sometimes be outraged, and it'll still be framed, by love and by this idea that you got to turn at some point. So it was helpful in these kinds of days. American Sonnet, I think this is the last one I'll read from the book. American Sonnet for my past and future assassin. The umpteenth thump on the rump of a badunkadunk stumps us. The lunk, the chump, the hunk of plunder, the umpteenth horny, honky stump speech pumps a funky rumble over air. The umpteenth slump in our humming democracy, a bumble bureaucracy with teeny tiny wings too small for its rumpled dumpling of a body. Humpty Dumpty, frumpy suit. The umpteenth honk of hollow thunder, the umpteenth believe me, the umpteenth grumpy, jumpy retort, chump change, casino game, tuxedo, teeth bleach, stomp speech, junk science, junk bond, junk country, stump speech. The umpteenth boast stumps our toe. The umpteenth falsehood stumps our elbows and eyeballs, our nose and woes and wows and woes. All right. And so here are some ones that I've written since then. I'll just read a couple of these too, because, you know, I should have looked at what time we started. Am I going too fast? Let me slow down a little bit. Okay. Okay, here's one that's more, again, trying to write out of this form and into something else, and also still letting it be what it is sometimes, let the poems tell me what they want to do. So this is an American sonnet for my grandfather's love child. You take a tree where all the blackbirds are sleeping except for one, clapping its wings. That's the kind of woman who raised me. My mother changed her name to daughter, then to sister, then back to mother again. 3 times she parked outside her wretched father's house, undertaking a melancholy kind of karaoke. She can't sing, really. She's ashamed of her teeth. But she pretended an MC was saying, "Give her a hand," when she finished. I wasn't there, but I bet she jangled her car keys as if she was offering a small girl a ride to the beach, to the ocean side, to the water a girl becomes to survive, and the soft applause washing ashore when she retreats. To love her, I had to love the night curling up around me. I woke up surprised whether she was coming or going. Now, what that makes me think of is, I'm having a conversation with myself here at this point, of this poem that's in the book where I was trying to lay out for myself my mother's energy and my dad's energy, so a rooted kind of bull, which can have its problems but is also super stable, and a kind of bird energy that's frenetic but also hard to hold on to. So reading this poem, I'm sometimes we're just still really meditating on the same feelings we have about things, and you're just slightly changing it. That's what I mean, conversation. I already asked myself the questions, and then I'm gonna answer it. So, okay, so what I say that is here, since you bring it up, let me read you this poem that's early in the book that has behind it, now that you've heard that poem, that same image of the bird, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, now that poem makes sense. I didn't know what he was talking about. American Sonnet for my past and future assassin. Inside me is a black-eyed animal bracing in a small stall, as if a bird could grow without breaking its shell, as if the clatter of 1,000 blackbirds whipping in a storm could be held in a shell. Inside me is a huge black bull, balled small enough to fit inside the bead of a nipple ring. I mean to leave a record of my raptures. I was raised by a beautiful man. I loved his grasp of time. My mother shaped my grasp of space. Would you rather spend the rest of eternity with your wild wings bewildering a cage, or with your 4 good feet stuck in a plot of dirt? So see, that makes sense. I had to wait till the other poem would come before it would do something, I guess. All right, just a couple from this thing, and then we're gonna be on our way. Again, I could do the same thing here. So now I'm I can fill this out with a few things. Here's another figure that shows up, James Baldwin. So this time, I'm gonna read you the Baldwin poem that's in the book, and I'll read you this one. And then maybe they'll be in conversation. So here's the book poem for Baldwin. Wait a minute, where is it? American Sonnet for My Past and Future Assassin. 7 of the 10 things I love in the face of James Baldwin concern the spiritual elasticity of his expressions. The sachet between left and right eyebrow, for example. The crease between his eyes, like a tuning fork or furrow, like a riverbed branching into tributaries, like lines of a rapturous sentence searching for a period. The dimple in his chin narrows and expands like a pupil. Most of all, I love all of his eyes, and those wrinkles, the feel and color of wet driftwood in the mud around those eyes. Mud is made of simple rain and earth, the same baptismal hills and spills of dirt James Baldwin is made of. So like there's that. And in this poem, American Sonnet for Inner Visions, which is the name of a Stevie Wonder record, and James Baldwin shows up in this one too. American Sonnet for Inner Visions. When James Baldwin and Audre Lorde each lend Stevie Wonder an eyeball, he immediately contends with gravity, falling either to his knees or flat on his luminous face. I've heard various versions of the story. In this one, Audre Lorde dons immaculate French loafers, turtleneck ball gown, and afro halo. An eye-sized ruby glimmers on a pinky ring that's a hair too big for Jimmy Baldwin's pinky. He's blue with beauty. They're accustomed to being followed, but now the eye-patch twins will be especially scary to white people. Looking upon them, Stevie Wonder's head purples with plural visions of blackness, gavels, grapples, purrs, pins. Odds are 10 to 1. God also prefers to be referred to as they and them. Okay, and here's one that I thought when I wrote it would be like really the last one. Something happened in the stock market or something. And I was like, oh, he's definitely done now. So the book was done, and it was one of those ones that just came right out too. I mean, I often, I had my rule was to write him in one day, but then I spent a couple of hours on him, even inside of a day. And this one, it just was like that first thought, and then I started getting to like adverbs. Okay, so this is and this was like on the New Yorker, so it's out there. American Sonnet for the New Year. Things got terribly ugly incredibly quickly. Things got ugly embarrassingly quickly, actually. Things got ugly unbelievably quickly, honestly. Things got ugly seemingly infrequently initially. Things got ugly ironically, usually awfully carefully. Things got ugly unsuccessfully, occasionally. Things got ugly mostly painstakingly, quietly, seemingly. Things got ugly beautifully, infrequently. Things got ugly sadly, especially frequently, unfortunately. Things got ugly increasingly, obviously. Things got ugly suddenly, embarrassingly, forcefully. Things got really ugly regularly, truly quickly. Things got really incredibly ugly. Things will get less ugly, inevitably, hopefully. All right, so let's try. Y'all are a hard audience, man. I mean, what's wrong? I'm about to stop. You know what? I'm done. I'm gonna sit down. Come on now. Are you out there? Okay, all right. Let me read a few to you. I'm just like, what I got to do, bruh? All right, so here's some new poems. Right, those are the old poems. Let's get into the new stuff, right? But the new stuff, that's why I'll save it for last, because I'm nervous. I'm like, damn, if you ain't like the stuff I really worked on. Okay. This is, look, man, and what I'm saying is like the best is yet to come, No, I'm just kidding. All right. Okay, so Pseudicus Crucifer. I am shifting, if you heard a little bit of what the bird mother poem, trying to tell stories, and I would say to you, as I said before, like sometimes you're just trying to inhabit a spirit. Mostly, I just want to inhabit the spirit of this poet, Bridget McGee Kelly. She died like right around the same time as Wanda. Only wrote like 3 books. She would publish a book like every 10 years because they were hard to write. And she lived like somewhere in the woods of Illinois. And passed away kind of suddenly. I kind of thought probably there was going to be another book because it was like 2016, every 10 years. Song was her second book. To the Palace of Trumpets was like in '87. James Merrill picked it for the Yale. Bone Orchard, I think it was called. The Orchard was the one that came out in 2006. So, you know, poet's poet, but amazing. But she's gone, you know. So much like I said to you, on the 13th, if it hadn't been Wanda's birthday, I'd be like writing like Edna St. Vincent Millay or something, you know, some other sonnet writer. But here too, sometimes I'm just like, man, if Bridget would hear, what would she do? So this is one of those kinds of poems. I think maybe it's the only one kind of like that. You know, they're in here, but these poems take a minute. And Pseudocus Crucifer. The father begins to make the sound a tree frog makes when he comes with his son and daughter to a pail of tree frogs for sale in a deep south flea market just before the last blood of dusk. A tree frog is called the tree frog because it chirps like a bird in a tree, he tells his daughter, while her little brother, barely 4 years old, busies himself like a small blues piper with a brand new birthday harmonica. A single tree frog can sound like a sleigh bell, the father says. Several can sound like a choir of crickets. Once in high school, as I dissected a frog, the frog opened its eyes to judge its deconstruction, its disassembly, my scooping and poking at its soul. And the little girl's eyes go wide as a tree frog's eyes. Some call it the spring peeper. In Latin, it's called Pseudocus Crucifer. False locusts, toads with falsettos, their chimes issuing below the low leaves and petals. The harmonica playing is so otherworldly, the boy blows with his eyes closed. Some tree frog species spend most every day underground. They don't know what sunlight does at dusk. They are nocturnal insectivores. No bigger than a green thumb, they are the first frogs to call in the spring. They may sound like crickets only because they eat so many crickets. Tree frogs mostly sound like birds. The tree frog overcomes its fear of birds by singing. The harmonica playing is so bewitching, the boy gathers a crowd in a flea market in the deep south. A bird may eat a tree frog, a fox may eat the bird, a wolf may eat the fox, and the wolf then may carry varieties of music and cunning in its belly as it roams the countryside. A wolf hungers because it cannot feel the good in its body. The people clap and gather round with fangs and smiles. The father lifts the son to his shoulders so the boy's harmonics hover over varieties of affection, varieties of bodies with their backs to a firmament burning and opening. You can find damn near anything in a flea market. Pets, weapons, flags, farm fresh as well as farm spoiled fruits and vegetables, varieties of old wardrobes, a rusty old tin box with old postcards and old photos of lynchings dusted in the rust of the box. You can feel it on the tips of your fingers, this rust, which is almost as brown as the father and the boy on his shoulders, and the girl making the sound a tree frog makes in a flea market in the deep south before the last blood of dusk, just before the last of dusk, just before the dusk. See, now when you clap, I ain't gonna trust it. I ain't gonna believe it. It's too late. I'll read a couple of new ones. So, yeah, you know, so the book is here. Definitely the sonnets are good. You should check them out. And then these are like just, you know, these few are online. So that one's on the New Yorker too. And then this one too is one where I should if I tell you the movie I was watching, you know, I don't know what you're gonna think of me. But there, you know, in movies sometimes it's called continuity. Like you'll watch a scene and then something will happen. And then you'd be like, well, that should have been edited out. So I was watching this movie, And this thing happened where these people, well, maybe you'll know it if I give you some clues, like they were coming out of a game or something, and then maybe he gave her a cup. I mean, this is how it started. Like in the scene, he gave her a cup, and then like they kissed, and then in the next scene, they got the cup again. So I looked at my dad, and I was like, did you see that? And I was like, I'll be back. So then this thing sort of came out of that. Continuity. Before getting into the cab, she hands him a cup. Then, after they kiss, she hands him the cup again. As they walk, she hands him a man-made substance. Then, after they kiss, she hands him the cup again. She hands him a chalice of lightning, and he hands her a chalice of fire. Then, in the next shot, after they kiss, they exchange chalices again. When she goes through the metal detector, she carefully places a pair of hoop earrings in a plastic tray. When she retrieves them, they are 2 silver bangles she fits to her wrist. When they climb from the cab in the rain, her hair is wet, but when they kiss on the sidewalk, her hair is dry again. After she takes off her helmet and breastplates and enters the water wearing nothing but courage, she says to him, "You are nude, but you must be naked to win." But the closed captions read, she says, "To survive, you must bear the heart." When they climb from the river, her hair is a river where night has fallen, tangled with twigs and stars, parting like a path of escape. But in the very next shot, as they climb from the river, her hair is braided with wire and string. When he bangs on the rain-streaked window of the cab, yelling her name in a pivotal scene, briefly reflected in the window, in the rain, tangled with wires and stars, above a river, is the hand of a fan or a stagehand, a bodyguard, body double, bystander, interloper, beloved ghost, and the 2 of us watching from a bridge on the far side. All right, and then these other couple of poems. All right, yeah, they get weirder. So here, how about this? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like I thought I had an ending, and then I tried it again with the same ending. So either one poem is better than the other, don't tell me, or maybe I don't know, so we'll see. Strange as the rules of grammar. The 2 or 3 times I saw Lil Wayne hanging out at the Praline Connection in New Orleans, he had a mouthful of bling covered in forkfuls of greens or green beans or white rice and red beans on a tongue of strange, lucrative grammar. The answer will be that which allows the best possible future when the plaintiffs come before the judge or the farmers before the king. It is not that which incurs unrest. The photograph does not belong to the photographer, it belongs to the camera. God jerry-rigs to the backs of a barn owl and a bat. We get a bird's eye view via the camera, attached to the bat, under cover of fur and weather, strange as the rules of grammar. Like the branch of the forest industry tasked with trimming branches, strange as the sound of your signature on paper. All the animals, unbeknownst to us, communicate using telepathy. The owl films the room wherein you are reflecting on something strange as the rules of grammar, between being grounded or being buried, between being anchored or sinking. You know how they say at the forked tongue of the crossroads and at the crooked foot of the foothills, nothing you haven't already heard. Strange as the wound, strange as the first wound you ever received. The scar so old, others must tell you how it was made. I'm like, should I try them back to back? Because I don't know, I don't know how they're gonna work. Okay, strange as the rules of grammar. I can't, I'm not gonna explain it, I'm just gonna read it to you. Let me make sure I got the whole thing here. Yeah. I have uncovered evidence your broken secret heart holds a hairline fracture held together by kite string. Carol Burnett is heralded in a criminally low number of imaginations. The leaves in the fall burn a copper like fire in a storm of applause around a laughter strange as the rules of grammar. Like, who remembers Carol Burnett's laugh? Like, how remote is something like that? But if you ever heard it, you know what I'm talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's beautifully iambic name. Do not think of all the tall in him squeezing into a stall at the mall as strange. Someday, as his father whispered to himself, someday that boy's gonna change his name. I ran away from home as soon as I had a chance when I was 4 or 5 in the Carolinas. Certain words never used to cross my mind. A God who claims to be on the side of good but remains hidden is strange as the rules of grammar. The mouth fills with mouthfuls of grammar, strange as the flowers a lost child finds in the woods and consumes. Strange as that a toddler cries in public when something shiny appears, a candy hard as a ruby wrapped in plastic, a lonely coin blinking in the grass or at the bottom of a fountain within the toddler's grasp. The first time my parents left me alone with a babysitter, I ran away before noon. They spent hours looking for me before going home to find I had been waiting on the porch the whole day, they say. You too may recall a story so old you never thought to mention it to anybody. Strange as the first wound you ever received, the scar so old others must tell you how it was made. 2 more. So yeah, this is the one that came in the mail today, so I'm I just figured I should try it out. If now, I typically try these things out before anybody sees them, and then somehow, when I got these proofs today, I was reminded that I had thrown this other really crazy poem in there that I thought I was still working on. So I was like, let me see, I can still work on it. It's just a magazine. I could change it for the book. It's also I don't even want to use this kind of terms when I talk about this, Corona poems, pandemic poems. I was just doing these quatrains, but really I was doing couplets. So I was like, if I get 2 words to rhyme, I'll have 4 lines. And in that way, I could just keep writing them all the way through it. And so I did. But I wasn't really, sometimes I had rules, this would be kind of also a pachachka, a thing that I had played with before. But really, it's just rhyme quatrains, but they're loosely rhymed. I'm looking at one that's mother rhymes with surefire, or Houston rhymes with one, or Warren's rhymes with arms. So it's new to me, and because I was doing this kind of, anyway, you know what, let me just read it to you, and then I'm gonna read you one more, and we'll be done. So it's called Do Not Put Your Head Under Your Arm, and it's Eric Satie has all these weird songs, and I was playing a bunch of Eric Satie through the pandemic, so I was I'm gonna use my, the songs that I'm playing, I'm gonna make them the titles of these things, so again, super complicated. But the title also works without that. Do not put your head under your arm. It appears I will never be remembered as a great singer, nor extravagant eater. Either I am standing or I am dreaming, or I am standing near the mouth of a theater. One early and deeply progressive symptom of the Kafka virus, that's what I was thinking it was. It wasn't the coronavirus. I was it's the Kafka virus. So I was just calling it that. Okay. One early and deeply progressive symptom of the Kafka virus, a stream of movies seeps into the shell of the infected individual sleeping. Dream factors greatly in the disease. I accept I may never get over the ways my mother loved me poorly. She is close to God in me. On a planet without surefire gods and mythologies, there is family. Inside the stream of Whitney Houston's voice, Dionne Warwick warns, you're gonna need me one day, you're gonna want me back in your arms. Because she sounds just like Whitney Houston when she's singing, they're related. So it's you don't need me. Often, right after taking a photo, you immediately crop or color the image, so it seems the thing is the memory. I'm not saying you have to lie to dream. I am listening to the sound under someone repeating something that changes depending on the weather. The entire roof of my head fills with strangers. Matisse liked to have the nude near to see her, but Picasso liked to close his eyes upon her. What I remember of 1987 is mostly what I remember of 1988, except with different deaths and births. If you watch Vertigo as a kind of allegory afflicted with the Kafka virus, you may notice inside the movie is a whole other possible story told from the point of view of the young lady. I love Vertigo, you gotta watch it, but think about it if Kim Novak told a story, come on, man. Each new pair of glasses assures things never look the same, but several glasses of liquor can create the same feeling. Balance the morass and the molasses of jackasses. Even where I doubt the presence of God, I am awed by the scale of creation. The science suggesting all that happens is coincidence is nonsense. Intrepidation, misfortunate, yalicious, holy smoked turkey, attack of the third dimension. I continue to have believe a fourth S resides somewhere inside the word obsession. After bouts of daydreaming, I log sleep like a marathoner giving a number before the run, like a numbers runner, like the bookkeeper and a beekeeper weighing the queen's honey. I stream the sequel to a terrible disaster movie where the protagonist searches for a lover with the support of characters who meet catastrophe helping the main character. The gun is lowered, but then a toe or two in the boot is shot. And then when the toe comes off, hold up. The gun is lowered, but then a toe or two in the boot is shot. And when the shoe comes off, there's a hole a grandchild or two, a generation or two later, can put a finger through. Before the sleeping dream, we are told to keep nickels in the glasses of wine by our beds. The virus seems to have some relationship to cash. All Kafka virus staff and personnel at work for your personal well-being station on Earth, the time is well past now and nonstop. We are singing, signing on. I was struck by the sky of my South Carolina. It made my mouth ache. I was old by the time I heard the prophet Isaiah used to preach naked. Ghost, the loss that broke you was so ubiquitous, I failed to see it lingering in the ether, like the misspelled affections that go undetected by both letter writer and letter reader. Often I confuse vivimus morendium est, which means let us live, for we must die, with bibimus morendium est, which means let us drink, for we must die. Isamu Noguchi sculpted the marrow of a black stone into bamboo and planted husks of live bamboo shoots to guard it. I know this ragged clock is clogged with dust. All right, and then one more, and we can talk. I guess that's all right. I guess there now, so that's what it's gonna be. All right, so here's the thing, I have tried this out a couple of times and poked at it after, and I was talking about inflection and thinking about a poet who's like, mostly you just listen to that voice, even if they're giving you really great instruction, there's just something about the voice that catches you. And so I know that this poet, Tim Siebels, who we were talking about, has that quality. And I was like, but you know who else has that quality? Bob Ross. And I was like, I'm gonna write a poem just to calm myself down. Sometimes I just need to be calm, and I need to pretend to be Bob Ross. So Bob Ross paints your portrait. Today, we're going to get to work on the details of your expression. And believe it or not, the only colors we're going to use will be blacker than most blacks. We'll use a black canvas and just a single finger instead of a brush. So let's take and dap the tip of your pointer finger into the black, like so. And now we're going to cover everything between jawbone and temple, cheek and nostril, lip and eyebrow, on both sides of the mouth in black. You folks at home are welcome to use a thumb, use a pinky or pinky toe. I just want you to enjoy yourself. Get the feel of the color until it suits you. And just gently tap, tap, tap gently the color into the shape of a forehead. There we go. Maybe like we're touching a tiny, tender button, just gently dabbing and tapping the black in. There we go. We want it all approximately the same deep space black, black hole black, moving between our canvas and fingertip, gently, barely touching, tapping and touching, layers of fingerprint until we have the look of a deeply textured black, like so. Okay. Now, we're going to put some of the past and the background around your mind all the way out to the edges of the canvas where all kinds of things are happening. In the distance, maybe we'll place a mother and the Father, but will make them mostly visible in your expression. What's so very nice about these black canvases is if there's light shining on them, they look completely different. It's almost like having two paintings inside of one. The night sky, the soil. Today, we want it all to disappear and appear to disappear. Maybe there's a stretch of love that sort of graduates into nothing. Maybe there's nothing but waiting. We want to touch gently enough to calm the longing, the boundless beauty bound in you. It's like debating whether water is bluish green or greenish blue before it blackens. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. We can begin applying some little black stars in the background without changing our technique very much. Wherever we picture stars, we can just touch the canvas like so, okay? We can add black stars for eyes and black stars for scars. We want it all as black as the space around a constellation. There we go. And maybe we want to take and add a little bit more of the past. It's happening all the time. Just enough to convey what we're trying to feel. The texture beneath the finger. Okay. Maybe one of your parents is in some way bigger than the other. Maybe one gives you your stinger and the other gives you your shell. So we'll have to work a little harder to help you forgive yourself. And we'll just lay in some of your favorite color, which is black, under the blackness. Lamp black and ink black, boot black and blackjack and blacker. Gently tap, tap, tapping. Now, I think I mentioned it earlier, but in case you missed it, if you have any questions or comments or something I can help you with, please feel free to drop me a line. Lay in some blue black, ivory black, jet black and blacker. Gently tap, tap, tapping. There we go. I would just love to hear from you. You have all kinds of beautiful depths and layers and shapes of black, okay? Okay. Now we're going to handle your hair like a lovely coat of black feathers. Or it might be a black feather hat, a black feather wig, or afro, or cloud. We'll take our fingers and just make little crosses across your crown. Folks trying this at home might want to make big, bold plus signs if you're feeling bold, whatever you like. Feathers the color of hair the night before it turns gray in the darkness. The color of sleep or sadness or escape. Absolutely no pressure, no pressure. Just the textures of touch. I can't shake the memory of a woman I loved poorly, curling her finger as if pointing up at something inside herself when she showed me how she wished to be touched. There we go. If we pick up a little bit of the darkness under the color, that's okay. That's just fine. We want to pull the darkness out from the edge and blend it over the curve of your nose, following the curve of your speech down into the onyx, the gunmetal, the black magic rabbit hole of a top hat over the mind kind of black, moving between canvas and finger like so. The only pressure is yours. Take your time. Soon the darkness stands back from you a little. Can you feel yourself emerge as you fall backwards? Wait till you hear what I've got planned for next week. Is who hurt you equal to who you hurt? Is who loves you equal to who you love? We'll start right there and move in the direction of desire. But right now, let's begin working on your shadows. We're going to figure out some kind of way to do Q&A if y'all want to do it.
We have a couple microphones if you want to ask any questions. I'm just going to ask, it's kind of a large question, so I'll try to ask it sort of specifically. I guess it's about like your process and your relationship to form. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about how you said that the sonnet is a love poem. So then one part of the question is just, well, why did you choose the sonnet for these poems? But then also, when you read the first sonnet that isn't in the book, that has to do with your mother.
Okay, sure.
I had a really strong feeling that there was a different register. And so that when you returned to the book, that you had practiced this great restraint, and I wondered if that also had to do with the form that you had chosen for it.
Yeah, I mean, that was also a sonnet too. So, even inside that box, it can be colored differently, I think. But what I really was working on, with the form is I knew it would be love. So I thought that was good because I needed something to hold really outrage, and moving towards indifference. Like so many of the lines are really working out that. How to come back from that kind of stuff, like the deeper the wound, the more heroic the healing. If you think about that as a kind of nation, that feels like a better way than thinking there's only one direction to go from bad decisions, And so all of that centered not around even 14 lines, but like the volta. So what I would say is like, if you're just looking at adjectives and not nouns, so the noun is the sonnet, but the adjective can do something. So like the English sonnet is 14 lines also, but for 12 of those lines, you kind of think in one way, and then you turn in the last couplet too, and the rhyme is set up that way too. And in the Italian sonnet, it's like you're thinking something for 8 lines. So it's like 2 octaves, and then you change your mind, and you got 6 lines to keep contemplating that. So to me, culturally, that makes sense. That like, British people will be like, I'm mostly right. I'm right for 12 out of the 14 lines. That, that's how you like take over the world, thinking you're always right. It's, And then, but something slightly more enlightened would be, I'm mostly right. I'm not gonna say it's 7/7, which is why you don't find many sonnets that have a turn right in the middle. It's almost like too boring. So you still have an opinion, but then you give people 6 lines to reason with it. And I was thinking, if that's true, what would an American sonnet be? Where would that volta be? And it's like everywhere, because it's just so crazy. You get a black president, you get another kind of president, it's just like, there's no real sense of what's an appropriate term because it's just turning everywhere. So that was what I was trying to do. So anytime I went into the form, I was just thinking I can't come out thinking the same thing. Something has to like turn. And those things just depend on the day. I can't say like the way that notion of how distinct it would be. But that's why I kept announcing it in the poems, like this idea of the clamor of voltas, or that thing must have 6 sides to it. That's the 6 sides of a cube. That's like a box that's got all these dimensions. Like I'm working really out a way to deal with whatever it is that the world was.
That's a great answer. You guys have any over there behind Patrick?
Okay. Hello. Nice to meet
Hi.
you. Should I stand? I guess I'll stand. My name's Yazud.
Hi.
And I've been thinking a lot. I feel like I have a lot of kind of friends of mine who are artists, and we think a lot about, process, but just the idea of like stealing, but not stealing in like a, you give flowers, like you kind of pay credit where credit's due, but the way
Right.
that everything ends up being an amalgamation of something else.
Sure.
And so I wonder if there's a specific line or poem where you think about like, because you speak to so many writers that you draw from. I feel like I should have been taking notes.
Right,
But
sure.
I wonder if there's a line where you're like, oh, actually, I can trace that this was from here and that was from there, or if you work in kind of a different way.
Oh, that's a good one. You know what? Because I was going to say, like, you're absorbing it. So I would say, in the case of Bridget Begin Kelly, it was just a kind of like enchanted, dark kind of thing. Like, I knew her, and so I met her once. I shouldn't say I knew her, but I met her long enough to hear a little bit of something about what she believed in, because I was running behind her like a puppy. But it's almost like Elizabeth Bishop and Sylvia Plath together or something. Those are 2 people that she liked. So intense and like hot, but also refined and like stately at the same time, with this extra thing of like, because she maybe was a nun for a little while, and so also there's other little thing that puts you up off the ground. So I'm just describing a feeling that I got in her poems, and maybe got even in the vicinity of her, that I miss sorely in the world. So I'm just trying to, it's like talking to her, so she helps me figure out how to do like that Pseudocris Crucifer poem, because I'm like embodying her. So I don't know how I think about it. So I'm not looking at a poem of hers, I'm just feeling the way that I'm trying to describe to you a certain kind of thing and writing towards it. And then I wrote that poem for my son for his like his 15th birthday. And so I don't even think he knew what was going on. You know, I'm using her, but I'm using her to actually get to a place where I can read it to him, you know, the boy with the harmonica in the poem. So I was going to say no, like there isn't a line. But then I thought, you know, Those Winter Sundays is the first poem I read by Robert Hayden. That first was the debate of whether it was a sonnet or not because it didn't rhyme. But I thought that it had a whole bunch of turns in it. So it's like, you know, Sundays too, my father got up early and then put on his clothes in the blue-black cold. And then, so there's a stanza break. And then with cracked hands that ached from labor and weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. Maybe there's another stanza break. No one ever thanked him. When the rooms were warm, he would call on me. I don't forgot the last part. Who polished my good shoes as well. What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? It's like, what did I know? What did I know of love's austere? I totally mangled the poem. Anyway, inside that poem, there's all these turns. So it's a temperature turn from the first part when the rooms were warm, and then the second part is like, what did I know? What did I know of love's austere? So when I looked at the thing, I was like, it's clearly a sonnet, but it was just me again talking to myself. Like I wasn't arguing with anybody except for looking at it and answering that question, which I knew people asked, like, is this a sonnet? I'm like, yeah, there's like a whole bunch of voltas in there. And then I thought, okay, that seems like a kind of good way that it's possible that there's a precedent for something like that I can say to people if they say to me, a sonnet with a bunch of voltas is not a sonnet. I can say like, well, maybe, I mean, here's a classic, a beautiful poem. So that still is a strategy that I'm looking at in that poem and getting permission, which is probably how I would think about it all, really. Like this idea, it's just like law, you know, sometimes you want to break the law outright, and other times you just need to know, like, where the line is, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, there's people that have broken this kind of law before. I'm not totally radical here. Wanda, who wrote American sonnets, and she called them jazz sonnets, sometimes they would be 14 lines, sometimes they would be 16 lines, and I was like, that ain't no sonnet, you know? So again, people have their sort of standards for what it would be, but the energy that she put into them, that like intensity, I was like, oh yeah, like that's where the sonnet can hold. It can hold all that fire that, you know, she had as a writer all the time.
That's so wild. I feel like you're one of those people for me. Like, I feel like you're one of those people for a lot of people where you read your work and it's like, oh, sonnets can look like that? Like, I thought.
Yeah, but I'm getting it from somewhere too, that's all, you know. I'm just saying, like, it's reading and trying to have a conversation, you know, with whatever's been put out there before. I think this is true in all art, you know, that you're really trying to have some kind of conversation with it. You're not just consuming it, you know, it's different than eating to me. Maybe people think of it as something where you're the consumer of it. I just don't, you know, it's not quite that, you know, it's something else, so.
Over here.
So previously you mentioned how sometimes you need to wear a mask in order to get to the heart of poetry. So I was just wondering what your experience has been wearing that mask, like in American sonnets or your poetry in general. And also, do you ever feel like when wearing this mask, you're being more genuine to yourself, or are you being more genuine to someone else? Kind of like how the sonnet at the back of your book can be interpreted by different people.
Cool, good question. Well, Oscar Wilde said it first, like, if you want a man to tell the truth, give him a mask. And I think that's true, but I would say something around like my approach, which sometimes comes up in these things, like when people say, you know, how do you write, what's your habit? I say like, you know, lowest bar possible, like where I have to have no standards, I will not have them in terms of like strategies for writing. So for a long time, it's like, I don't do retreats, I can't go out. And it's like, maybe I should go out, that could be interesting. So having a low bar means that like, whatever strategy emerges, so sometimes there are no masks. So again, to think about the registers and I guess that was the first one I read, American Sonnet for my grandfather's love child. There's like an emotional honesty that I'm hoping the form will hold as not so much a mask there. You know, I feel extremely transparent in that kind of poem. And they show up, I would say even the mask that I'm wearing in the poem, that Sudica's Crucifer, remember I was like, I'm gonna give it to my son on his birthday, and he's gonna remember it. I was just telling him this, you know, actually it's the same kind of line that came up in that other poem where I was just trying to tell him that this was this thing he could do. Like when he was 4, he just went through this period where he was this amazing harmonica player, you know, and he'd be going places, like, holy shit, how old is he? I'm like, yeah, you know, genius. And then he sort of lost interest. However, we went south one time, and again, it was both this magical moment where even in the South, where everybody has a harmonica, they were like, wow, you know, and I was also like, holy shit, they're coming too close, you know, the kind of people who like harmonicas. They're coming too close. So anyway, so I was trying to actually give him I wasn't making it up, so it couldn't be a full-on mask, but I also was trying to show him too, like storytelling. It was like his birthday, and our folks had come up, and so my mom and my dad was there. I never talked to him about my poems. My former wife and her kids and my daughter, who I've since written her a poem too, but at the time she was like, is that what you're giving him for his birthday? You know, he'll get some money too. But I still asked everybody to sit to hear it, you know. And so I was trying to be like, don't ask me about it, which is what I say to him. Like, I don't want to talk about it, but this is the gift, and I'm asking you to remember like this thing about yourself, because they were all in the market, you know. And so they were like, yeah, that's right. But then they were like, it wasn't no tree frogs, those were turtles. You know, it's like, because my brother bought the turtle and it lived to be like the size of a football, and ours died. Like, and so they were like, what are you talking about? I was like, it's just better if it's tree frogs. So, you know, you follow what I'm saying? Like, I'm wearing some kind of mask, but it's still to get at something that I'm like, you recognize it. You're not gonna like fixate on if it was a frog, if you see what I'm doing. And so, but yeah, I worked on that thing for a long time, and I do think it just depends on the frequency. I wanted to like give myself those terms, probably because I had written something and felt like it was getting too far from like the thing that I think I believe about poems and art as gifts. I'm sure whatever it was something like that, you know. So I'm looking for challenges, even something like that, that'll help me, even if that poem took like a year to write, it still is a reasonable challenge inside of a person who's saying like no rituals, no surefire way to do this thing. Let's try this, let's try that. And you know, the sonnets were like that too. Can I do it? Let's see. But it's always a question, and it's mostly generative more than like resolved. A lot of the sonnets, you know, they didn't make it in the book. I had, you know, 2 years under my belt, but there's still I still think the book could probably be smaller. I probably could shave off another 14 and it would be as interesting, you know what I mean? So it's just like, but that was the test, to keep moving forward, to not spend a whole bunch of time revising stuff, to let them be uneven sometimes. They're not all great. But for me, that was sort of more important than like a notion of like perfection, or a notion of like, this is what a poem is supposed to be.
Hello.
Hi.
You're very cool, by the way.
Thank you.
I guess I was just wondering, I'm sure you've done a lot of these. Is there a question that you like really like being asked, or a favorite question that stood out?
I
to you
hate
that you've
questions.
been
What I
asked
usually
before?
say is like, if you have questions, the poems have failed, you know. I like just again conversation. No, I don't think I have any. I like to hear myself say something I haven't said before, but I never know what that's going to be.
What was the name of the movie you were watching?
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Matthew McConaughey and whoever Goldie Hawn's daughter is, they're leaving the Knicks game, and it's a Coke, and that's why I'm watching it with my dad. Don't ask me why. South Carolina, my dad's like a prison guard, and we're just sitting there watching the movie, and I feel like right before they get in the cab, yeah, he gives her the Coke, or he gives her something, and then they kiss and say goodbye, and then they get it again, getting into the car. And so I looked at my dad, and I was like, did you see that? If he had said no, I would have been like, I probably made it up, because you don't really, I feel like you can fix that stuff in the digital age. Like, it need not still be there, but it is. So when I don't know what part of the movie, they're coming out of a game, and they had this thing with the cup, and I was like, oh man, I need to go work that out. So, but I also was like, if people know what that is, that's gonna ruin the whole poem. If I told you that's what it was before I read the poem, you'd be thinking of like Matthew McConaughey or something all the way through it. So I was like, I don't need that ruining it. But, so that's what it was.
All right. I was just wondering, you've used, I noticed a lot of ekphrasis in sort of the poetry you were reading tonight, and you also talked some in the talk you gave today about wanting to bring more of your visual art as an expressive mode, and I'm just curious if you can talk more about how you see poetry connecting with other types of art.
Yeah, this is a good question too, because it's just a hunch about narrowing the lines for what we think of as like modes of creation, you know, modes of expression. So I started out doing art because that was like I don't know, it's a thing I could do. But I also had an interest in language, and I just maybe, because one was private, nobody made me choose them. And so on that principle, that just basic, simple principle of sort of just being interested in stuff and exploring it with, even privately, felt like something that could be turned into a kind of approach, you know, really to everything. So there's a bunch of stuff that I do that I don't I mean, it's not like I don't share it, but I don't finish it. So like the piano, I've been playing the piano for like 20 years and can probably fool you after 20 years for maybe 3 minutes or so. And then you'd be like, seems like he's playing the same thing again and again. But it really is a regular practice. If I can, I play, when I'm near one, I have one, so I play every day. And if I'm on the road, but it's not a thing that I'm not gonna have a record. I don't even think I could play in front of people. I get nervous, you know what I mean? But it's just a habit to do something other than what I'm always doing, which is like thinking in language or thinking visually. So let me just say this another way. I'm really going down the road here. So when I applied to graduate school, I think maybe I said this to somebody today in the class even. I said I wanted to get a master's degree in creative writing. Because I was like, that's what it is. It's just creative writing. So I sent them essays, and I sent them stories, and I sent them poems, and felt like that was right for what a writer would want. And then they put me in poetry because they thought it seems like that's probably what it is more than anything else. So what that means to me is like probably right. I think I am a poet because it absorbs as language everything. Plays, essays, stories, monologues, dialogues, experiments, poems in the same line. So I do think that it was right for me to be a poet, but I also think, again, the notion of a maker, which isn't a poet, is just like natural to all the genres. So I just feel like you should do what you can do and do what you're interested in doing, but maybe don't think about the adjectives that get in front of it. Like, I'm good at this, a good piano player, versus like, I play it, yeah, that kind of thing. So, but it'll keep you going. So I guess I'm saying to you, I think the future is something where people are just less interested in genre and more interested in just like creativity. I mean, there's such a premium on it. So I try to practice that for myself, just being creative is enough. Just be expressive, Send it as a gift. That's also the story of, I tell my students sometimes, like, you wrote that poem about your dad, give it to him. Just tell him you don't want to talk about it, but give it to him. And then you have like made something of it. It doesn't have to be like in a New Yorker necessarily. So thinking of like ways we can make art. And that's what I do with my paintings mostly now anyway. I make them around Christmas. I wanted to do this picture of my aunt for Mother's Day. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. But I spend long times on them, but that is like where they go. And it's a way to keep me working. Yeah.
Thank you for these great questions. Thank you, Terrance.
Thank
It
you,
was
everybody.
amazing.
Thank you. Thanks.